What's happening, everybody? I've been trying to do this live for quite some time. The reason I have not done it is actually not even because of anything aside from the fact that I had a dental procedure coincidentally on Monday, which was the day after my dad passed. So I have physically been in a lot of pain. Um, I had a tooth extracted, and I've had two or three teeth extracted before. Two of them were wisdom teeth, and they were in pain for a little bit, but the pain started to get better. This has not been the case. I looked it up. I talked to my dentist. My dentist was kind of saying no big deal, but I think it is a big deal because this pain is excruciating even now. I'm just doing the live anyways because I have a little time to kill because I'm going to the dentist in about an hour. What's going on, Tay? How are you? Yeah, so I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the biggest things that I learned from my dad. And this is also an impromptu. I didn't prepare anything just off the top of my head. I hope you get better. Thank you. I'll throw an update on my community page after I get back. So one thing that I knew about my dad was that he was somebody who never seemed to give up on anything. He had this like endless well of optimism. Even after he had his first stroke, he was planning to become a real estate agent. And he did get his real estate license. And he was trying. It was something that at that point in time he couldn't really do legitimately because of where his brain was at due to his dementia. But you couldn't tell him that. He was studying, he was trying to figure out the market. He was figuring out ways to compensate for those limitations. So that's one thing, this never give up spirit. I saw him accomplish many things in his life that people thought he couldn't or that seemed like a big mountain. And I feel like there was nothing that I could tell him that I wanted to do that he would say, you can't do that. I know people who have told me they've told their parents, it's my dream to do this and this and this. And their parents are like, stay in your lane type thing. You can't do that. I never had that happen with him. Never had that happen with him. In fact, he was more on the side of telling me my dreams aren't big enough. Another thing is, I learned not to let anybody be able to tell you what you can and cannot do. And I learned that from watching him after having each and every one of these strokes, because every time it happened, we spoke to the doctors. The doctors gave us a prognosis. He's not going to be able to walk. His speech is going to be impacted. He's not going to be able to do this. He's not going to be able to do that. And then he had a really strong will. So he ended up going through the rehab, going through the occupational therapy, going through the speech therapy. And every time he exceeded the doctor's expectations. Because up until I think maybe his fourth stroke, he did get himself back to a place of being able to walk and talk. He was impacted, of course. You know, he was walking with a walker and he did require some assistance, but he was still doing it. That's the whole point. He was still doing it. And he was like, I'm willing to do anything to get well. I'm willing to do anything to get better. And I admired that. When it came to school, he was really tough on me. He's definitely really tough on me when it came to school. He wanted me to get a lot of education. He wanted me to do well. If I brought home bad grades, that wasn't it. A funny story that I told at his 70th birthday, which we held last year on Zoom, was that he would come home from work and he would be like, Mark, are you done your homework? And I would tell him, Dad, I'm almost done. He hated that answer. He hated the answer of, I'm almost done. Because he would say, Mark, what does almost mean? And almost could mean anything. In his defense, almost could mean anything. If it was 30 questions that I had to finish, I could be on question 5 and tell him I'm almost done. I could be on question 29 and say I'm almost done. But for him, he would always tell me there's no such thing as almost. You're either done or you're not done. You're either completely finished the job or you're not finished the job. Like basically, if it's not 100, it's 0. And I didn't like when he said that. I hated when he said that, as a matter of fact. But it's also a mantra that I have taken with me in life, because sometimes people look at things that I'm doing and they're like, I'm so proud of you. You've come so far. You've gotten so far. And I'm not celebrating at those points when they tell me that. And they're wondering, why isn't this guy celebrating? He started here and he's so far from where he started. Because if I start to celebrate like that before I cross the finish line, I might not cross the finish line. Thanks, Van Hoot. I might not cross the finish line. We've all seen those videos of people that do those track and field runs, and they're running and they're ahead of the field, and then they're coming close to the finish line. They're kind of looking around and seeing that nobody's nearby them. They slow down a little bit, they start cheering, and then there's that person running fast behind them. And they're like, I'm still trying to win. That person that is behind them, they might not be in the picture right at that second, but they're still running and pushing and going as fast as they can. And next thing you know, it becomes a viral video of that arrogant first place runner getting passed by the second place person who never stopped running. Now they're second place. Not because they were the second fastest runner, but because they started celebrating when they were almost across the finish line. Appreciate the super chat, Van Hoot. By the way, Van Hoot, I'll tell you this offline also, but I'm now my trip to Toronto is a little bit more open. I wish it was not under those circumstances, but half the reason I have not purchased a ticket yet was because any trip that I was making was dependent on my dad's condition, and I couldn't be certain about that. So my trip was dependent on his condition. And now that he's not here, you know, I guess that trip will be a little bit more of a vacation. Obviously, I'm very sad, but it's not something where I have to worry about coming home as soon as possible or being prepared to come back on an emergency flight. Let me see. Sounds like he was a strong-minded go-getter for things that he wanted to do no matter what. For sure. He had he had like his doctorate, he had his master's degree. Um he worked for the United Nations at some point. He was a certified public accountant. He knew like what 11 languages. There was just endless amounts of things. It sounded like what he wanted you to know, that you need to know what it is to be strong-minded go-getter. Yeah, for sure. I never had a dad, raised by a single mom in the projects. To have a strong man guiding me, my life would have been more cohesive, make more sense. You know, an interesting thing is that I'm trying to think of how to say this positively. Within my dad's culture, my dad is African, my dad was Ghanaian. So a lot of their brand of guidance was toughness and discipline, you know? So it's something where, as an adult, and especially in his final years and days, I had to look back on and kind of realize that the brand of love that I was given was largely based on the brand of love that he received. So it was not necessarily something that I appreciated when it was happening, because I was just like, this guy is tough. He's always demanding of me. He's never proud unless I'm doing something so exceptional. Like, it's not just the average thing that I'm gonna do that he's gonna be happy about. Like if I come home and say, Dad, I got a B plus. So, you know, like a B plus is not an A. But something that I've taken from that is that now I'm like very disciplined myself, and you know, I kind of internally demand a level of excellence and professionalism from myself that possibly I would not have done if I hadn't had that kind of upbringing. We will chat about it later. Strict. Do you understand it? Yes. And I'll tell you why I understand it. Honestly, I understand it because of a therapist that I was talking to maybe a few years ago that kind of explained that to me, because I was complaining about it. I was like, I don't like this, and the way things go like this, and the way things went like this when I was a kid. And the therapist asked me, like, well, what was his upbringing like? And while I don't know every detail about his upbringing, I know some parts of it. And I know that that's kind of what his dad was like. His dad was a disciplinarian. And I actually remember, funny enough, I actually remember him telling me he's light. Like when I was complaining about what he was doing, I remember him being like, man, you're lucky to have a dad like me, because my dad was like 10 times more strict than me. He would never have been able to say what you just said to me or bring home this certain grade or do this thing that you're doing. My dad was a lot tougher than me if you think that I'm tough. And I believe that based on the stories that I've heard about my grandfather on his dad, but you know, that seeking of affirmation is one hell of a motivator. Rich, you say a lot of thought provoking things. You always do, because that part can be a blessing and a curse. Like, as much as it's a good thing that I'm always driven to excellence, there's also a certain part of me that seeks people to be like, good job, Mark, you did well, because of how little that I heard that, growing up. Well, some of my family was like that, and at times they would say, speak when you're spoken to. And as a child, I would say, when am I supposed to speak? If um, I'm laughing because I remember those times, like you're having some kind of argument, and it's like, why aren't you responding to me? Not responding is rude. And then I remember you respond, and it's like, don't speak until spoken to. And it's like, okay, so I'm not supposed to speak, and I am supposed to speak. Oh man, those were some days, man. As a child, I would say, well, what am I supposed to do? That's literally what I just said. So I would just go into another room. Is because they were having adult conversations. Oh, okay, you're talking about something slightly different. It wasn't our time to speak. As I got older, I understood, because today adults have conversations and they let their children sit around while they're talking and text with children. And the other thing is, children now, there's nothing they haven't heard or seen, because we're in the access era. Like, my parents could just make me go to bed when certain things were on TV, or they could make sure that I don't buy certain CDs with explicit lyrics, and they didn't have 100% total control over the things that I knew and heard and saw, but they had a good amount. They had like 80% of that control. The only time they couldn't control it is if I snuck downstairs or something and turned on the TV late when they were sleeping, or if I went to school and heard something at school or saw something at school, but not like now. Nowadays, shoot, you try to limit them and they can find all they want on their cell phones. Um, Children, on the way they are raised, they sit in adult conversation and sometimes indulge in it. Yeah, that's so true. Like, sometimes the parents have so much going on that they're not paying attention to the kid, but the kid is always listening. So little do they know, they are impacting and influencing that kid. And it's important to let a kid be a kid. I feel fortunate that I was not a kid who grew up too soon, type of thing. I mean, to an extent I was, for certain reasons, which I might get into someday, but for the purposes of this, um, I was able to be a kid for most of my childhood. You're so right. The funny thing, Rich, is he was fun on Christmas. I even have a video of him dressing up as Santa Claus. Those were the times I remember him being the most fun, was during times like that. He was serious all year, but he would be fun during that specific time. And I'd be like, who is this guy? My dad's not usually like this. He's usually very serious and strict. But during certain occasions, but also not just during certain occasions, that's not how people really knew him in the office. And that's not how people knew him at work. And like, even people who have been in contact with me describe him as fun and smiling all the time and lighting up the room. Um, but I know that's not uncommon because we all have like I mean, all of us who work, I should say, have a certain way that we are within our own household and a certain way that we are at work. I mean, probably for some people, there's less of a gap. You know, some people have more parallels between how their work life is and home life. But a lot of people are like, this is work version of me and this is home version of me. And they are two separate things. Oh, yeah. Control of what you wear. Oh, yeah. What they purchased for you. Man, how you should act in the street. Shoot, man. Sometimes I see kids in the store. I remember this one time I saw this kid acting up in the store, and this was not even recent. It probably was 10 years ago. And I know for me, that's a guarantee. They'll yell at me in the store and they'll spank me when I get home. That's a guarantee if that was the same thing for me. But this parent, the mom, I believe it was negotiating with the kid. If you stop yelling and running around, I'll get you a toy and I'll give you some ice cream when you go home. And I'm like, what? Man, I wish I had those kind of negotiations. My negotiations were like, shut up or you're going to get it. And I never wanted to test those odds. And it's just all right about sneaking this way. You can still have fun and obey your parents. Yeah, you had to sneak. Like if my mom or dad said bedtime was 8 o'clock, I'd go to bed and then I would keep like peeping out my room. Are they asleep? And then it reaches like midnight or something, and I'll sneak over to the TV, flip it on, turn it on really low. Like I was scared. I was scared of disobeying my parents. There was consequences. I could not talk to them any kind of way. Mm-mm. They don't skip a beat. Slap in the car first. I've seen these memes about when your mother gives you that pinch when you're like at a guest house for dinner or something. You're sitting at the dinner table and you're doing something you're not supposed to do, and you get that firm pinch from mom. And that pinch is the warning. Like if you don't stop, when we walk into this house, when we get to the house, something's gonna happen. Or even sometimes you might not even get to the house. It could be like what Rich said, slap in the car, you know. Fun scared. That's a funny way to put it. Fun scared. Yeah, and I remember times like playing with your friends. Like you go to somebody, one of your friends' parents' house, and the parents are hanging out. I remember my dad. I don't know if you guys remember the O.J. Simpson trial. And I don't mean do you remember it? I mean, do you remember what was happening in your life during the O.J. Simpson trial? And my dad and his friends loved the O.J. Simpson trial. They watched this thing like it was the greatest soap opera ever invented. And I remember like wow, all the adults would gather in the room and they'd be sitting down watching this O.J. Simpson trial, talking about it. And during that point in time, we the kids were able to do almost anything that we want in that house as long as we didn't break anything, tear anything up, destroy anything. That was one time I remember we just had kind of unfiltered fun because the adults were so into this case that they didn't even notice us around. My mom used to fold the belt in half. Oh boy, so did my dad. Yes, it's almost like you have multiple lives. Oh goodness. When you have to switch your tone in different areas, you know how to split yourself up. And oh, you're talking about, yeah, yeah, that's right. You're talking about what I said earlier. Like you have a tone with your family, you have a tone at work, you have a tone at the hair salon, you have a tone at the barber shop, you have a tone at the bank, that's true. That's very true. Some people could know you as one way. Some people could know you as a totally different way or person. We are all pro OJ. That's because, well, that's because everybody wanted to see the athlete get off the hook. That's really what it was. Pretty sure my dad was pro OJ at the time. I remember him walking around like, if the glove don't fit, you must have quit. Now people make a joke out of that. And that's what's wrong with today. Yes, I used to get the eye. Oh yeah, that's the other thing. The eye. The famous eye, like you better not embarrass me in front of company. You better not embarrass me in front of the company. Many faces to many different people. True rich. LOL, LOL. I got that. Or the kick under the table. Mm, bring me back. Take me back. Yeah, so I guess I don't really know how many things I listed. Like the disciplined aspect, uh, staying positive, never giving up hope on my dreams, not feeling that anyone can limit my potential. I remember at one point he told me that he thought I could be a professional saxophonist. I don't consider that out of the realm of possibility. I have been paid to play the saxophone before. I've had a few, maybe 10 or so paid gigs for the saxophone. But the reason I'm not a professional, well, first, being a professional musician is hard, but I don't play enough. I don't practice enough. I don't sharpen my craft enough to be good enough for that. But I don't think that I'm not capable. That's the difference. I think that's my point of what I'm trying to make. Because of him, I think that I'm capable to do anything if I work hard enough. And if I can't do it or if I haven't done it yet, my feeling is never I'm not doing it because I'm not good enough to do it. It's like I'm not doing it because I don't work hard enough or I don't want it bad enough. That's my feelings on most things. My little brother used to fall out on the floor My mother's like, you lay there if you want to, and she would leave him right there. And when he would get it when he got home, you know what? I remember one time when I was in the store with my mom in the grocery store, and it was time to leave. I didn't want to leave, and you know how kids are sometimes when they're taken out to the store, whatever. They don't care about what you're in the store for. They just care about running around and picking up things off the shelves. And that was me. And it was time to go. And my mom's like, okay, Mark, it's time to go. And I'm like, nah, I'm staying. She's like, you're staying? I'm like, yeah, I'm staying. I was little at this time too. So she was like, okay, we're just going to leave without you. And she started leaving. And I believe that was a mistake on her part because I think that I went somewhere real quick and hid, but then I got lost and then I was scared. I was crying in the store. They had to call me on the intercom. And then somebody who worked there ended up finding me and taking me to the counter. It must be a nightmare for a parent to lose their little kid in the store. But you shouldn't have played with fire. um, he straightened up and then she'll give him the pinch of his life. That death grip pinch. People would be talking about it like so entertaining for them. Yes, he was almost invisible, and that was the best time ever. Yeah, when the parents are really, it was especially the men actually, because the women were always paying attention, but when it was the men and they were watching like a Mike Tyson boxing match or whatever, like, or they were watching sports or like what I was talking about with the O.J. Simpson trial, they didn't care. They didn't care what we were doing unless we were doing something really bad. That's the only thing. Like, don't do anything crazy, don't break anything, or don't hurt anybody. Things that would be causing a strong alert or a loud sound for them to stop what they're doing. And boy, would they be mad if you did something that interrupted whatever they were doing. So those are like free for all times. Oh yeah. It was like Tommy on Rugrats. You remember Tommy, the parents were meeting up and the kids were scheming. It's like, what bad thing are we gonna do today? And meanwhile, it's like, oh, look at the babies being cute. Babies are trying to do something that's gonna get them in a lot of trouble, and the parents don't realize it. Anyways, y'all, thanks for the company. Hopefully, after I go to this dentist, they will at least help me towards starting to resolve this problem of this immense pain. And if they do, I am going to hop back on here later, hopefully on camera. That's my goal. That's my aim. And talk to you guys some more. I have a lot of things that I haven't done. I have a lot of videos that I didn't put up that I created last weekend. And then, my dad's passing happened and I haven't really touched the computer. So I've been backed up on a lot of stuff, but I plan to throw myself back into that, this week because you can't just sit down and grieve all the time. Like, you need some healthy distractions. I haven't been in the gym. Well, I was in the gym once, but part of why I'm not in the gym is because I'm just not into it right now. But secondly, this tooth pain is no joke. I don't know if anyone has had something like that, but it is no joke. It's been waking me up at 4 o'clock every morning because of how bad the pain is. So, anyways, thank y'all again. And shout out to the replay crew. Make sure to like and comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll talk to you guys soon.